Hello, Brock.
Hello, how you doing, Kat?
Pretty good. Pretty good. This week of my last week of work, so I'm very looking forward to my summer vacation.
Oh yeah. What uh what is your job?
Teacher. I'm a teacher for the for the whole period. I teach high school.
Oh, amazing. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
you must be relieved. Yeah, my wife just she works in education as well, and so she just finished up a couple she works at the community college level. She just finished up too, and she's enjoying a nice break.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. This week I should finally down that all of my seniors are able to graduate. So that's happening next week. I was like, dang, okay, we got it.
That's great.
Well, Brock, I just wanted to say thank you for your time and make it a work somehow to come on to the Cast Chat podcast to talk about your book and the
Of
movie.
course. Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. That's awesome. I'm happy to talk with you.
So, first of all, after reading your edition of the Paper Mask, I
Hmm.
thought it was really, really good. And it kind of like takes
Thanks.
me back to my senior year, my high school year, with all the seniors, with all the groups. And I really remember, oh yeah, I remember my senior break, but I wasn't involved. I thought everything happened in my high
Mhm.
school when the senior break happened.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of like a senior prank. I mean, Paperbag Mask, of course, is about some high schoolers who commit a theft and then commit a bigger theft. And so it's kind of this heist movie type story rolled into this high school experience. And it's based on a real prank that some friends and I did our junior year, actually. We had a whole other year that we had to come back to school. So we didn't even get the cover of, oh, well, we're leaving anyway, so who cares? We actually had to come back the next year. But yeah, and as you've read in the story, things get wildly out of control very, very quickly. And certainly in writing this story, there's a lot of invention that happened. I took the bones of what my friends and I did and made the story quite a bit bigger for the novel.
Yeah, I mean, what inspired you to write that book? I mean, how did the paper map came to life like you just said it was like your fun story but how to like shift it with like was it the amount of people involved and was it like specific from the real life experience because as I read the book there was a lot of like lesson or
Yeah,
moral to the story that was like okay maybe Brock has done something here not typical like beginning, middle, end of like every book. And sometimes books don't have lesson or the moral. It's just a story for everybody
right.
to read. But I have learned a lot from reading Paperback Mask. I might even read it again later on down the road because it's really, really good.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I can honestly say I didn't set out to like imbue the story with lessons because a lot of people know me from The Shift, which is something that's like overtly about, dealing with faith. And Paperbag Mask is not that. It's not dealing with faith in any way. Other than there's a couple of characters who talk about, being a part of a religion, but it's only an aspect of their character. It's nothing that the book gets into. So in making this story, I was not thinking about faith, not thinking even necessarily about morals at all. But what I was thinking about it was what what would I say as who I am now? What would I say to my 16, 17-year-old self? What conversation could we have? And there's even a particular chapter in the book that I think for me is what the entire book is about. Where there is an adult, a very significant adult in the story talking to our main character who is 17 years old. And they have a long conversation together. And that to me is what the book is about. It's about a conversation between me and who I was when I was a lot younger. And so, the main character in the book, he's not me. But, any character you write as a writer has so much of you, and there's so much of me and who I was at that age in there. And so I think just naturally and kind of making that the goal of like, let me have a conversation with my younger self. I think that naturally just brought forth these themes and what you refer to as morals and these lessons. There's just things that just naturally emerged from that approach. Um, and so I'm both trying to be very honest about the experience of what it is, or at least what it was for me to be a high schooler and what my friends and I were like. And I'm also trying to, even though the book is told entirely, almost entirely from their perspective, I'm also trying to bring in this element of, hey, there's some things you should keep in mind, And so by the end of the book, these characters, these high school characters, they've learned some of the things that I wish I had learned at an earlier age, that I would have really benefited from had I learned those things at that age. Um, so it's a little bit of therapy, this book for me, because I think, gosh, there's so many things I'd love to tell that kid. And it's also me being able to recognize, wow, I've come a long way, that I even know this stuff at all, that I understand these things now, and things that I just were such mysteries to me that I had no clue about when I was that age.
And you mentioned that your first edition of Paperback was back in 2018, and I
Hmm.
understand that you are working on republishing a newer version. So, what was the reason for that? Is there some changes you want to do, or you wanted to expand it a little bit more? And that's what I really enjoyed reading the new version, and I had the old book somewhere in my house. I forgot about it. I was like,
Really?
oh, I have
Wow,
both.
you're one of the
I
few.
really appreciate for you letting me read the new version. I really enjoyed it so much. It's like making your personal experience come to life. And again, with all the life left in, now you're going back to the 18-year-old stuff. And right now, I don't know, 35, 40, 50, go back and like, wow, I wish I did this differently. Or what would happen if we went this way? Or
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways we could go on about with the paperback mask.
Yeah, so the original one was published, it was as my first novel. So it was my debut novel, and it was published by a small independent publishing house. And it came out at a time when a lot of YA was very mature. And I'm sure there's a lot of still, and what I mean by mature is like a lot of like some pretty overt sexual stuff and dealing with abuse and dealing with it in a really visceral way. And so I had a really hard time with that first version of the book at that time, trying to get it placed into the places that I wanted it to go. I wanted to get an agent and get it to, a big publisher and all of that. And I was having a really hard time with that. I just couldn't do it. And because they were reading this book and they were perceiving it a certain way that I thought was really unfair. But anyways, I found an independent publisher by the name of Pen Name Publishing, and they believed in it. And they're like, oh, this is actually really good. Let's publish this thing. Unfortunately, Pen Name, as a smaller outfit, was not able to really publicize the book that much. And more importantly, a few weeks after publishing it, Pen Name folded. And so here, this book that I really believed in and I thought was so, I thought it was good. I thought it deserved, to get out there. It just died. It just didn't get a chance. There was it just, your publisher goes under, and it's gonna hurt things. So, so here we are years later, and 3WS Books gets a look at the manuscript, and they're like, "Wow, this is not only really good, but also you were way early with this book. People now, especially schools and librarians, they're looking for things like what this is." And what they meant by that is that here's a book that deals with all of these mature topics. The Paperbag Mask deals with abuse, and it deals with sex, and it deals with friendship, and it deals with all of the and drug abuse and all of these things that are really important and that are very serious, and but it doesn't deal with them in a way that it is inappropriate. Like there's a PG to PG-13 quality to the book. There's not a lot, there's no profanity in the book. There's a lot of profanity in a lot of YA. And so here's a book where they're like, man, librarians are going to go crazy for this book because it's so appropriate and yet it's dealing with these serious topics, but it's dealing with it in a way that anybody can read it and not feel uncomfortable. And so, I was like, well, great. You guys seem to really have a vision for it. Let's bring it out again. And so that's what we're doing is that we're putting it back out. And that gave me the chance to go back into the book and all these years later, take a second look at it and say, okay, well, how can I improve it? And, it's not a drastically different book. It's still the same story and all of that. There's a couple of scenes that are new. And one of the things that really resonated with people in that first version of the book was I did these footnotes at the bottom of a lot of the pages that were both humorous and also gave you further insight to the characters that wasn't in the main text. And the new publisher, 3WS Books, they're like, well, we love these. Do more of these. So I probably doubled the number of footnotes that are in the book from the original version. And of course, we're getting a new cover, which will be debuting soon. So it's going to get a proper rollout, awards consideration, all of that stuff. So this book, Paperbag Mask, is now finally getting a real shot at getting in front of people. And I'm hopeful, based on the response I've received so far, I'm hopeful that it's going to be received well. We'll find out soon.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hoping. I kind of already pre-ordered, so I will have the original version and the updated version. So
Nice.
once the book comes out, I'll be happy to help you promote it in any way I can.
I
Write
appreciate
more
that.
reviews and write the purpose of the book, or any way I can help you get your book out there, along with the other books too as well.
No, I super, super appreciate that. And that's word of mouth is like I can do, we can do ads and we can do all the awards consideration or, whatever, but it's really about people like you, just spreading the word and saying, hey, this is a really good book. You need to check it out. And even if that just means lending your copy, like to me, I care a lot less about sales and a lot more about just people getting a chance to read it and see what they think. And to me, what's exciting about that, especially with a story like this, that is written by an adult with an adult perspective, but written into that teenage perspective. It's very much told from those kids, from their perspective. But I think because I am doing it so much in terms of it being a conversation between two generations, um, it is a book that I have found that people of my age love. They're totally surprised by that. I don't know how old you are, Kat, but I think probably people your age as well are surprised to find, oh, this book, which is about a generation that is not me, I actually really enjoy it. And I think what they're responding to is the fact that I am not just writing to to the younger generation. I'm writing as a catharsis also for me. And so I'm getting a lot of reports from people who are having that same catharsis where they're reading this and they're like, oh, this is reminding me of what it was like. And this is giving me a way to process these experiences that I had, and it's telling me something about myself today. So I think it's a book that has the ability to reach across several generations because I've also seen where people who they're living that right now. Um, this book means an incredible amount to them. There was my daughter. She had a friend who read the original one when he was in high school. He was the exact same age as all these characters, and and I know it's my daughter and it's her friend, but I never met him and I don't know him. Uh, but he said Paperbag Mask was his favorite book. It legitimately became his favorite book because he felt like it spoke. It was for him. He saw himself in a way that he hadn't seen it himself in other things. And that's the other thing about this book is that I'm very specifically writing about a group of kids that I don't think get a lot of attention. Um, the kids in this book, they're all AP students. These are some of the smartest kids in the school, and these are the kids who are trying to be good. And we don't often see that, right? A lot of YA, we see kids, who are kind of on the rebellion side and all of that. These are kids who are trying to be good and then do something terrible, And so that's what was interesting to me because those are the kids that I knew. We were all trying to be good. And our main character Sometimes well, I know this, boys at that age can be really obsessed with sex and things like that. Redmond, our main character, is trying not to be. Like he's actively trying to not be that person. And that's something else I don't think gets a lot of representation. When you think about the movies that we enjoy and the books that we enjoy that surround, this age group, it's usually about just how overly sexualized they all are. But where's the kids who are trying not to? Because that's what I was. I was trying to keep all that under control, and I was having a really hard time with it. And so that's what I wanted to represent in this book. And so I think that there's such an opportunity here for kids who maybe don't see themselves as represented in media in the way that I never saw myself represented in media when I was in high school. I think there's going to find some representation for them in this book.
Yeah, definitely. Because we did the paper map, bag map, like the different kinds, but they're all in AP. But they're so different. Like one is popular, one is
Right.
not so much, and one is in sports, and one is just no, I don't want to be involved in anything. But somehow she gets involved. So it's really nice to see all of these kids come together, especially with the main character who had issues with the dad. The dad kept saying they're not your friends. They're never your friends. They're only your friends for
Right.
whatever reason with the popularity of the paper man and when the first video came out. I won't say anything more about the book. But when the first video came out, and that's how it went blew up with the whole
Yeah.
link, with the whole Britney in concept while in high school. Because again, high school was, I don't know, maybe a tough time for everyone, figuring
Yeah.
out where they are, who they are, where they stand, and which direction they're going, up or just stable or downhill.
Right. Right. No, you're right. And it's the diversity of the cast of characters, and there's basically in kind of an homage to Ocean's 11, there are 11 kids that are wrapped up in this heist. And they each are very different from me. Like you said, there's the most popular girl in school is part of this group. And also the kid that everybody ignores is part of this group. In fact, he's leading the group. And in fact, their friendship is one of my favorite parts of the book that kind of emerges is that you've got the hottest girl, most popular girl in school, becoming friends with the most overlooked boy. And what does that look like? And is that even possible? Can a boy who's feeling all the sexual stuff, who's overlooked, even be friends with the hottest girl in school? Is that even possible, or is all that other junk going to get in the way? And that was a lot of fun to explore with the book because, look, yes, they're all AP students, but as anybody who's been through the AP program knows, which I did. I was an AP student as well. There is such a diversity within that. But the thing that they do think they all have in common, every AP student has in common, is they tend to not be the super rebellious kids. They tend to be the ones that are going to obey the rules and aren't looking to, do anything that would jeopardize their education. Which makes what they do in this book all the more extraordinary because it's wildly out of character for all of them. And that, of course, was a ton of fun to write.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that book. So I'm looking forward to have my second edition. So I'm gonna start with the paperback mask. So I'm looking forward to that. I really like the pictures. I was oh my god, that is so cool. That is just so creative. And how they like update each picture on their plan or their dark threat with the teacher. Don't get the finder or you will never see this again. But it was just like I don't think a teacher would cancel a binder unless there was something, more serious. But okay, we'll play it at that.
Yeah, yeah. The drawings, in my before I was a writer, I was an illustrator. And so when it came time to write this book and I got to the part where I'm like, okay, because they steal this thing and then they send ransom videos to their teacher. And that's what I did in real life. I directed these ransom videos, when we stole this thing. So all of that, we did that. And so for me, it was a question of, well, how do I represent these ransom videos in the text? And to me, the most boring way to represent those was to describe them because I just couldn't. To me, that was like watching paint dry. I just didn't want to write it. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to draw it. I'm just going to draw these in there. And so, I have experience in making comics and stuff. And so when people read the book, when they get to those videos, all of a sudden the entire format of the book changes and it becomes comics. I represented the videos with comics, and that was a lot of fun to do. It was fun to draw the characters and kind of give what I think they look like to the reader. And hopefully it's a nice surprise and it makes it a little bit more fun as a reader. That was the goal anyway.
Definitely. The notebook and the other side of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that book. It was like kind of like a memoir, and it gave me more glimpse of your life and how you were brought up. And I was just like the whole book. I was just like, really, that happened? So
Yeah.
I wanted to know a little bit more about why do you wrote that book, and what made you think maybe this could make connection for the people out there who have experienced something similar as you,
hmm
but not completely, but a different scenario, and how you overcame it, and just live with the life as much as you can and be positive and just move on from that trauma. But again, really good book, and I really love the cover and all the illustrations. It just made me think like a true story of murder, forgiveness, and a piece of faith for you to move on and the family.
Yeah. So the other side of fear is a memoir. It's a true story, and it's about, when I was 12 years old, my father was shot in an armed robbery. He was shot 13 times and he survived. And then 8 years later, he was shot in another armed robbery with much, much more serious consequences. And so you're talking about very formative years for me. That's my teenage growing up. Paperbag Mask, the real story, happened in the middle of that story. I make no reference to it in The Other Side of Fear, but these were really formative years for me. And
Yeah,
so, as an adult, I came to understand, this is going to sound completely ridiculous, but it's true. I came to understand and realize, oh, people don't get shot 13 times and then live. That's actually unusual. But when it happened to my dad, that was just part of my life. I'm 12 years old when this happens, and it just seemed normal. And now looking back, I realize, oh, none of this was normal. None of this was normal. This was all very unusual. The way my father dealt with the people who shot him the first time was very unusual. He dealt with them by moving on, by not letting it be something that made him bitter or made him unforgiving. And so I had this what I recognized was an incredible story. It's really an incredible story what my dad went through, and then my side of it. When he was shot the second time, I was actually serving as a missionary, a 2-year mission, and I was 10 months into it, and so it had been 10 months since I had even seen my dad, and then all of a sudden I got the phone call that he had been shot a second time, and it was much much more serious. I'm not giving away the whole book here, but I just realized that here was this incredible story to be told, and also that it could be of benefit to other people. Because as you say, we went through a lot, my family and we came out the other side of it. That's why it's called The Other Side of Fear. It's about what happens when you get when the absolute worst thing happens, when the thing you're terrified of happens. And what happens on the other side of that? Like, who are you on the other side of that? Do you give in to that? Do you just let that define you? Or do you learn something from it? And you take something from that experience and you let that transform you into something even better. And needless to say, I mean, for me, I feel like it was a transformative and a positive way experience for me. Not in the sense like obviously, I would love to have my dad back, but I can't deny that it had a huge impact on me in a positive way. I don't see it as a negative force in my life at all. None of what happened during those years um, because it allowed me to have such greater empathy and capacity for forgiveness than I ever could have achieved otherwise. And so I felt like there's power in writing this story down and detailing this in an honest way. Um, and like all good memoirs, I think it's a good memoir. But the good ones, the best ones, are bracingly honest, and they're most honest about who the author is. And what I mean by that is that I tried not to pull any punches with myself in that book. I'm really honest. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything that I went through during those years, including some horrible things that I said to my parents, including some horrible things that I did to friends, including there's just all of these horrible thoughts that I had, inappropriate thoughts that I shouldn't have had, while my father is suffering, but that are very human and very real. And so I thought this could be helpful. This could be helpful to write a book like this. I think it could be number one because it's a good story. It'll be entertaining, and that's job one. You got to entertain people, or who cares what else you say. But then also, I know that people do go through in tremendous circumstances that are very difficult and have big things to forgive. And I thought maybe it would be helpful to write this down and show what my path was towards forgiveness, how I logically got there. And not only me, but also through the inspiration, because it is dealing with faith as well, through the inspiration that I feel and the blessing that I feel I receive from God, who helped me through this time and helped my family through it. And so I just thought that could be incredibly beneficial. And it turned out that it was. I'll never forget one woman who came to me soon after the book was published, and she said that um, her son one night opened the door to his apartment, and a man put a gun in his face and shot him and killed him. And that reading my book, it had happened 8 months earlier, that after she read my book, it was the first time that she'd been able to breathe since that whole incident, since she had lost her son. Like it had that kind of an impact on her. That's incredibly meaningful. I mean, the first draft of that book, this is my first book I ever wrote. It took me 5 years. That makes the effort worth it. That really does.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good book. I mean, I could definitely relate with you because I am myself writing a book, a memoir about my life, and that I've had a few traumas, including trauma that I had with my family about one thing. I mean, 2016, 8 years ago, about 8 years ago, we were involved in a really bad car
Hmm.
crash, and my son's life was hanging by a thread,
Oh
but
my
he
gosh.
survived. So it was just, and I wrote that part of it in my book as well. And like you said, you put everything into a book, into writing as a therapy, because once you get it all out and you write it out, you'll be more free. So I'm really glad
Yeah.
that women approached you. Then this kind of happened, and when I read it, I feel like I'm not the only one. There are people out there that could relate,
Right.
but with a different situation. So your book also helped me too as well because it took me a while to forgive and to move on what happened to my family and my son, but I was able to move on. I mean, it took me, I want to say, 4, 5 years to be like,
Hmm.
okay, maybe it's time for me to work on my forgiveness and just to
Mm.
move on. I mean, he's alive, he's healthy, he's thriving, going into 8th grade in fall. So I have a lot to be thankful for. And growing up, I was not into faith. But then when I started to experience loss or trauma or something like that, I started to turn, okay, it doesn't hurt to try. It doesn't hurt to, keep the faith, keep the hope. Each people have different perspectives on faith,
Right.
hope, religion, yes or no, or one day or in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. That's 4 or 5 years. That's a long time to carry that kind of burden.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine. But look at you. You're so full of life and so happy now. And I can only imagine that during that time, it must have weighed on you so heavily. I mean, that would have to affect your entire being. I assume the happy person that we see today, that was not that person during that time.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
right. I
incredible.
feel, yeah. Now the last part is gonna be moving over to directing. So
Hmm.
when you are not writing, when you are not having the writer's hat, you have your directing hat. So
Right.
what is it like to be a director? What made you want to become a director?
Well, I love writing, and everything for me stems from writing. It really starts there, and it's probably my first love. But I also consider film to be the ultimate medium. You know, it really combines everything. It combines the visual with the written, with the audio. It requires the work of artisans, when you're talking about creating props and images and it combines all the disciplines into one. And film has always been my favorite medium. I'm a movie geek. I have always loved movies so much. Um, and I never really imagined that I would direct a movie. That wasn't really something I ever thought that I would get to do, or even something I aspired to do. And I won't tell you the very long story of how I ended up doing that. But when the opportunity came to do that, and I could do that, I did it. I immediately fell in love. It was like, okay, this is combining everything that I'm into because I love to draw and I love to write and I love to analyze, and break things down and I loved exploring how movies were made. All that was really interesting to me. And so when it finally came time to direct a movie, I knew that this was something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I mean, the day one, I just knew that okay, this is great. This is a sweet spot for me. Like, there's not a whole lot of things I can do, but I can do this, which isn't to say that I was perfect out of the gate or anything like that, or that I would even hold up The Shift, the movie I made, as a perfect artifact. But it's the thing that I love to do the most, and it's the thing that I think I can keep getting better at. And to me, that's the goal is let me find something that's challenging and something that I also think I could be really good at. And that's the thing that gives me the most satisfaction in life. So to me, directing is just a natural extension of writing. It's just the logical conclusion for a lot of what I do.
Do you have a favorite director, or do you have a director that really inspires you? Do you have like any work by any kind of director that you enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of directors that I'm super inspired by. I mean, I think Spielberg is probably at the top of the list just because his movies were the ones that I grew up on and that I could most recognize as, oh, here is a person making choices. I think Spielberg's movies were the first time that I realized, oh, a director chooses where the camera goes and how it moves. And that's what directing is. I mean, you think about E.T. E.T., you may not realize this while you're watching it, but that entire movie is shot from the level of a kid. Like, the camera is always down here, about 4 feet off the ground. It never really goes above that. That's a choice. That's a strong choice, and it gives that movie this very unique feel. And obviously it's a huge hit. But then also directors like Christopher Nolan is a huge inspiration. I love that he's telling original stories and just the complexity of his scripts. I'm really inspired by him. Ryan Johnson, the way he moves his camera is always just so fascinating to me. Martin Scorsese, the pace of his films, there's a lot of different directors that I just love that I take inspiration from. It's a very hard question to answer because I could just name directors all day.
I really enjoy E.T., but like you pointed it out, I didn't even realize. Like the director with the kid anger or whatever, I'm probably have to rewatch that movie. But okay, I
Yeah.
see what Brock is talking about, but it's one of my favorite movies. All of my friends were like, E.T. I was like, come on.
No, E.T.'s amazing.
Not
But
that
yeah,
bad looking, come on. Compared to
what?
Alien, I will watch. I will watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Alien a little more scary. But yeah, watch ET again. Pay attention to where that camera is. It is always right there at the same eye level as the kids. It doesn't go above that. It's awesome.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the chip.
Yes.
I am just like reading the book, and I watched the movie and I read the book. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to watch the movie again and like
Awesome. That's what
really
I wanted.
paying attention. Because I'm reading the book, everything is so detailed. Of course, books are more detailed the longer that the
Yeah.
movie span. So I'm like reading, I was like, Oh, you should the wife. Oh, and how the ship would work. I was so confused. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with the flow, with the movie, and then wait movie. I'm like, and the book came out. I'm gonna need the book. So I got the book and I read it. I was like, oh. And then I messaged one of my friend Aiden. I was like, the black no, the blue page is missing. I mean, it's supposed to be like that. She goes, yeah, there's a reason for it, but we don't know what it is. I'm like, I bet it's like a ship. Ship one, ship two, ship three, or something. But I wanted to say the movie, the book are both spectacular.
Oh, thank
And I
you.
could finally understand the purpose of shifting and the purpose of, I don't know, second chancing and faith.
Mhm.
Of course, I'm not very huge on the Bible or the story of Job at all, but I'm learning so much from the book and the story. I wanted to thank the cast of the movie, especially Chris Palaha
Hmm.
and Neil McDonough. My God, this is watching those two is so intense. I was like, please,
Yeah.
I'm back to his wife. I'm like, which one is there? So please tell me about your experience with the movie. I know the 22, 27 edit of the script before
Yeah.
the actual movie because of all the different shifts that's been happening through the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, any movie goes through a heck of a development process. And yes, we had about 27 different drafts of that script by the time we were done. Look, it's a very different movie. It's inspired by the Book of Job, but it's an original story of a man who has a confrontation with the benefactor, this mysterious stranger with these powers, and he ends up banished to a dark parallel Earth where he is then fighting to get back to his world, get back to his wife, and it's really hard. You can't do it. And so it's a good versus evil tale, but it's also this tale of a man versus himself, and it's complicated. It deals with the multiverse. It deals with God, and it deals with the devil directly. And because of the type of story that it is, because it does jump around between worlds and it jumps around between ideas, it was one of those things that was really tough to craft in a way that made sense to people. And even still today, there are people who say, this movie makes zero sense to me. I hear from them every day. I also hear every day from people who are like, whoa, I get this one. I get this movie. I get what it's saying. I get what it's doing. And honestly, those are kind of my favorite movies, the ones that are a little harder to parse, the ones that if you revisit them, they have something to offer. Those are my favorite movies. And I very consciously made that kind of movie with The Shift, where I said to myself, I knew that not everybody was going to get it, and that had to be okay. And I think that's important for a number of reasons. Number one, I think it's important that movies like that exist because those tend to be the movies we revisit the most because they have new things to show us every time we watch. And I've been so satisfied in hearing from people who have watched The Shift a second time. And I have yet to hear from anybody who has said this, watching The Shift the second time, it was worse. It's always the opposite. Everybody says, "Oh, it was way better the second time." And those are my favorite kind of movies. So that's the movie I made. Um, but also, I think it's important that we challenge the audience. I think particularly because the shift does deal with faith, it gets into this category of inspirational film, and I think we've gotten very used to what inspirational films are like. And there's even where there are the cliches sometimes that you hear with inspirational films, and people kind of know what to expect. People know what to expect so much with inspirational films that they get angry when you do something unexpected. And I find that really unfortunate. Not everybody, of course, but enough people do get upset if you throw them a curveball, that I just find that really unfortunate because I think that there's room for the unexpected. I think there's room for surprise. I think there's room for telling a dark story with hope at the end. So, that's kind of what the shift is. The shift is takes place in a dystopian reality. So we're kind of in this dark place for a long time. But the point of the movie is not darkness. The point of the movie is not no hope or cynicism. It's the opposite of that. The point of the movie is hope. The point of the movie is to say, a little bit of light within a bunch of darkness, that light's going to win. Doesn't matter how big that light is, that light's going to win. And that's ultimately, I think, where the shift takes people. So, I it took a lot. It took a lot of work to get that to a place where,
Good,
okay,
fun.
this is different, it's new, but people are going to track with it. And ultimately, I think we ended up with a film that most people do track with, but not everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading the book, I watched the shift. Um, I think maybe a month or two after it came out because
Hmm.
I didn't really go to movie theaters that much. So I was waiting for it to be released on Prime. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch it. At first, I was confused. I'm like, good movie. Okay, okay. I think I get the concept. I'm watching it.
Right.
And then later on, I got the book. I'm reading it. I was like, oh, it's that position. Like I completely was surprised and shocked when I learned about Gabriel. I was like, nah, how can I have missed that in the movie? Nah, can't be. No way, no way.
Yeah.
So I finished the book. I want to watch the movie. I watched it twice. And in different days, I'm going to watch it. I was like, how can I miss that?
Right.
But it was just spectacular. So I'm just very into the directing philosophy and how to direct the movie to make it work and to make it abstract and not so clear the people will catch. Because it took me a while. I'm watching the movie project and I'm like, okay, I remember from the book. And I'm not sure that. And I could see how the character keeps going back every day to the
Hmm.
diner and he would try something different because he wants to save that person, but he ends up not saving whoever in the diner or outside of the diner. They was like, they shall blue, or if this didn't happen, this will happen, or the lady in the crowd noticed
Hmm.
him and they stuck the warden on Chris. It was just mind blowing.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed the book. I really the book is in a lot of ways it's kind of exposing because I am laying out a lot of things that are only suggested by the movie. But I'm glad to hear you say that when you watch the movie, you realize that a lot of these things that were revelations for you in reading the book were actually already in the movie. They were there the whole time. You just missed it. And so that's fun. That makes it fun, I think, to realize that those things were there. Like Gabriel, I think there were some things about Gabriel in particular that people didn't quite understand, but that are in the movie. You just have to see it. Um, but I don't know. To me, that's fun. That's a fun game to play. Is to say here's these two versions of this story, and they complement each other. And if you only watch the movie, that's fine. You're going to enjoy that. But if you read the book as well, yeah, you're never going to be able to see the movie the same way again because it's going to change how you see it. And I think hopefully a positive way. I mean, that's up to the reader. But I wanted it to be a complementary experience, not to have one replace the other.
Definitely, definitely. Um, to have any other project in the possibility of the world upcoming year?
Yeah, I mean, I am always writing new things and working on new things. And right now, we are putting together another movie. It's called Glide, and it is a sci-fi action film. In similar to The Shift in some ways, but also very, very different from The Shift. I'm not trying to break people's brains quite as much with Glide. But it's a movie that I'm very, very excited about, and I'm hoping that that's the next one that I get to work on. And I got a couple other things that I'm working on that I haven't been too public about yet. But Glide, I think that has a strong possibility of being the next thing I do, and I'm excited to do it because it is very different from The Shift, and I'm excited to take everything I learned from making The Shift and put that into Glide. Because look, The Shift was my first movie, first script I ever wrote, first movie I directed. I have learned so much through that process. And so I look at The Shift now and I'm very proud of it. But like any other filmmaker out there, I see so many flaws and I see so many things that could be better. And so I'm really excited to get to my next movie and take all those learnings and make an even better movie than The Shift. That's my goal.
Definitely. Now, one more question about the trip. How did
Mhm.
you? I don't know. I can't remember if it was the director or the producer or you. Like, how did you come up with the cast? What made you decide the cast of the main character, like Court's
Mhm.
character and Neil's character and the wife character, Molly?
Yeah.
Molly.
Yeah.
How did you decide on that and the supporting character where Chris meet all these people, especially Gabriel? So how
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
that became the decision?
So the casting process is very difficult and it can be very long. We started the casting process in May of 2022, and we didn't finish it until just a few days before filming in late January 2023. So it was a very long process to get
Oh
to
my
to the
goodness.
cast. Yeah, very long.
Hmm.
And that's done with myself as the director, with the producer, Ken Carpenter, and with our casting director, Beverly Holloway. So it's the three of us working together, coming
Wow.
up with lists, saying, okay, what are these characters like? Who are the actors that could play them? And that comes down to a couple of different factors. Number one of which is who is the character and does it make sense for an actor? What actor would this make sense for? And then the other part of it, and not a small part of it, is does this actor um, elevate the movie by being in it? You want to get people who are somewhat recognizable because that helps people get excited about your movie. So that was always the goal is like, let's get people in here who are not only great actors, but that also when people hear their name, they say, "Oh, I'm excited to see this because they're in it." So that's a really really important thing. So in the casting process, oh boy, I could go into a backstory on every single actor and how we arrived at them, but just a couple of different stories. Elizabeth Tabish, who plays Molly, she was essentially the first choice for Molly. She was somebody I had in mind from the very, very beginning. I had seen her work on The Chosen, and I had met her in real life, although she would never remember me from that moment. We know each other now. Now we're friends, but I had a sense about her as an actor, and what really impresses me in actors is a sense of groundedness, a sense of being able to play things very, very real and not too outlandishly or not too over the top. And Liz is a very grounded actor. And so I was really excited about her. So she thankfully accepted the part right away. And so we didn't have to go through too much with Molly. Um, but then an actor like Neil McDonough, it took us a while to get to Neil. There's a lot of great bad guy actors out there, and there were a lot of different actors that we considered. When we got to Neil, what became really exciting right away was, okay, here's an actor, and he plays the benefactor. He plays our villain in the movie. Here's an actor who has a deep faith, who's a Catholic, who faith for him is very, very important, and also he is one of the best bad guy actors in Hollywood. He's played a bad guy in so many different things.
Oh yeah.
But he's also played pure as the driven snow good guys. So he's done both things, and he's done both things equally well. In later, in more recent years, he's become more well known for being a bad guy, but he has that capacity to do both. Plus, he has such an amazing look. He's got this white hair and he's got these piercing blue eyes. And so we approached Neil, and then Neil, of course, initially, I didn't know this until later, but his first reaction to playing the benefactor, because he realized real quickly that, yes, I'm calling him the benefactor, but he is the devil. His first reaction was no, absolutely not. I am not playing this part. And it was his wife actually who talked him into it and said, "No, you need to play this part." Because they looked at the script and they looked at what I was doing with the benefactor, with the devil, and realized that I was doing something really different. That I was approaching this not from the way Hollywood usually approaches the devil, which is here's this bad guy of all bad guys who's really demon and mustache twirly. I approached the benefactor, the devil, in a very different way. I was approaching him from the standpoint of how a Christian sees him as a fallen angel. And Neil like keyed into that right away. And when he keyed into that, and his wife said, "No, you need to play this because you are the only one who can understand what he's trying to do here." And I'm so grateful that she said that because it turned Neil's whole thinking around on it. And less than 24 hours after him reading the script, he came back to us and said, "Yeah, I want to do it." Because he realized here was an opportunity to play the worst of all the bad guys, but to do it in a way that he could express something about his faith. And if you get to the end of the shift, you can see that expression of faith in his performance. It's one of the more remarkable things I've ever seen anybody do with the devil, but he creates a sympathy for that character that I don't think anybody sees coming because Neil realized that what I was doing in that film, what I was trying to do, was give the devil an arc, an actual character arc. And you don't realize that until you get to the end of the movie. And usually the devil does not get an arc because the devil doesn't really change. So that's hard to give a character arc to a character who doesn't really change. He's just evil. He's just pure evil. But I realized that within this movie, there was a small character arc that we could give the devil, and Neil got it. He was the only actor we ever approached who got it. And I will always be grateful that he ended up in the film for that reason. Um, and I don't know if you wanted me to keep going. I could talk about Chris as well, but it was such a fantastic experience bringing these actors on board and seeing the passion that they had for this script and for these characters.
Definitely. I mean, I learned a lot about Chris from his movies and his social media. He's just
Hmm.
spectacular in all different movie roles. And when I heard he was going to be on the ship, watched the movie, and just read the book like that Neil, I was like, he is like the perfect guy for the benefactor. So thank
Yeah,
goodness his wife convinced him to change his mind because you can never know what the billion or what the devil look like or what the devil it could be because no some movies the devil are too obvious. They're like acting the devil, but he was more too normal, which was scary. And I
yeah,
was trying to
right.
figure out like, is he a good guy or the bad guy? I mean, he claimed that he was trying to help Kevin through the whole movie, that he admitted it at the end, and then sent him back to Mali. But yeah,
Right.
spectacular cat, and every post and every person really brought the movie, really got him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they all did such a tremendous job. We could spend another hour talking about each one of them and how amazing they all were. But yeah, I'm so grateful that we got such a great cast. And look, it was a privilege to have them. It was my first film. There's no way I should have had that good of a cast. So it was a real testament to our casting director and to our producer, for Ken and Bev, for bringing those people together because I lucked I hit the jackpot with that cast 100%. And
Yeah,
look, I do need to say that Chris Palaha, who played Kevin, like he was just as much my partner in this film as Ken was in a lot of ways because every single scene in that movie, with the exception of very few, features Chris as Kevin. And that's actually pretty rare. It's pretty rare to have a movie where the entire movie you're following one guy. And so Chris was on set every single day and was such a champion for this film, remains a champion for this film, and did such a tremendous job in that role. And he had to play many different versions of his character. It wasn't just one guy that he had to play. He had to play like a dozen different versions of this guy because of the nature of the story. And he was so good at it every step of the way. I love what he brought to that role.
yeah, definitely. That was a great accomplishment, and it's actually Oreo. Come here, my dog. I have a trail in the background, so come on. Anyway, that was a great accomplishment for your first movie now. You have a better feeling to go forward to use what you
Yeah.
have learned and some else or to do or not to do. So I'm very excited for the next upcoming movie project and see how it overflows. So congratulations to do on the shift, the movie, the book and the other two books, the other side of fear, which describes the memoir of your life and your background and your family, as well as the paperbag mask, which talked about high school and the different cliques and what to learn from lesson and morality.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I love telling stories. I don't care how I do it. I just love doing it. So thank you for reading and thank you for watching and thank you for helping me share it.
No problem. Thank you. I will get the podcast up and then share and then talk about each of the book and the movie and try to get it all out there. So I really appreciate you coming on to the Cat Chat podcast tonight to talk about your career as a director and writer. And I look forward to see more writing and more movies coming from you, Brock.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I hope to bring them to you. I can't wait to do it. Can't wait to do more.
Yes.
Thank you, Kat.
Have a great night, Brock. Thank you for coming.
Thank you too. And thank you so much
Bye
for
bye.
helping. I don't
Thank
know your
you.
name, but thank you.